a dietitian in private practice here in Houston. I work virtually a lot. I have a master's degree from Texas Women's University where I did my internship, and I'm really excited to be here. So I work a lot with weight loss clients, physique enhancing nutrition, bodybuilders. I also do a lot of functional medicine training, things from people who've lost their menstrual cycles, people who have hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's. So that is a little bit about my clientele. I love working with anybody and everybody. This is my passion, and I'm really excited to chat with you guys about this because I feel like there's not a lot of dietitians in the physique enhancing nutrition realm, right? There's a lot of that are in fitness, there's a lot that are in endurance training, but there's not a lot that are in body composition. So this is where my passion lies. I'm excited to chat. I am a visual learner, so there is a lot on the slides, but that's because that's personally how I am. So hopefully it's not too much, but I'm happy to answer, stop, ask me any questions as I go along. I brought my friend along. If you want to introduce yourself to videotape this for me.
Yeah, I'm Kayla Needham. I'm a registered dietitian, and I do an online nutrition practice as well, and I do mainly weight loss and body composition too.
Yeah. I'm excited. Let's get started. Oh, just a brief backstory. So I originally started weight training and learning about nutrition for bodybuilding. I was not yet trying to be a dietitian. I was in biomedical sciences, and then through bodybuilding and then my grandma getting diagnosed with colon cancer, I dove into the literature, finding out more about nutrition, and from there it was just boom, this is what God wants me to do. So that's my backstory. That's why everything is basically started with physique enhancing nutrition. All right, so the biggest thing when it comes down to body composition goals is nutrition periodization. So we want periods of time where we are away from a deficit, we're building, we're maintaining. These periods are what allow us to enhance metabolic capacity, upregulate thyroid hormones, focus on psychological benefits, as well as making sure we're doing everything in and off season for the athlete to make sure we are optimizing everything in their day-to-day lives. So in regards to calorie and macronutrient needs, off-season building, this is where we want to make sure we are optimizing the metabolic capacity, not trying to push calories too high to where we are reducing insulin sensitivity, but we really want to focus on building that quality muscle. That way we are able to improve on the stage, but also make sure we're upregulating all those thyroid hormones, those metabolic hormones that downregulate with dieting. In regards to macronutrients, it is definitely individualized for what people can handle, right? So there's some people that are a little bit more insulin resistant than others. I like to give a general overview on macros, what to do. Of course, we want to make sure we keep that protein high. We want to stimulate muscle protein synthesis as much as we can, especially in an off season. And then when it comes down to fat, we want at least 0.4 grams per kilogram of body weight. However, that's really low when you calculate it out, right? So I always start by going off of somebody's generic intake. And I don't know if this is the next slide. No. Okay. So somebody's generic intake, I'll look at their food diaries, I'll look at their diet history, and from there we calculate their needs and what they need in order to build muscle. Personally, when it comes down to building muscle, I like to put people in a moderate surplus because when we're gaining muscle, in beginning trainees, it's so much easier to build muscle, right? We have the beginner gains. So they're able to gain more muscle and less fat with more calories at a time. But when you're going into the advanced trainee stage, then you're really putting on like 0.25 pound per month. So we really have to make sure if we are trying to optimize somebody's total metabolism, we're slowly focusing on the gains. We have them in a slight surplus. That way we aren't putting on a bunch of body fat that is going to just reduce insulin sensitivity, cause inflammation, cause them to not feel good, and not provide any benefit to their own body for stage. Anybody have any questions about off-season and building? Okay. One of my favorite things to do, resensitization periods and mini cuts. So I love using mini cuts, especially in the off season, because they really allow you to, one, figure out how is somebody going to respond to a total cut in a contest prep, but also they help to increase insulin sensitivity, and they really help with anybody who's having gastrointestinal problems like they are in the off season, right? So you have a lot of different food, you have a lot of food jamming back into their system, and it kind of gives their gut a break, it gives their body a break, it allows you to increase that insulin sensitivity and prevent any of those metabolic adaptations. So this is an example of my client. We just did a 4-week mini cut. She did a photo shoot, but this was pretty good for her. All we did was drop her calories by about 250. So we just dropped her carbohydrates and she leaned out pretty dang well, focusing on sleep, stress reduction, lifestyle factors. These are huge, especially in mini cuts. Now, when I talk about resensitization, I'm strictly talking about training volume. So with resensitization, when people, they have high volume in their workouts for long periods of time, I do find that people stop responding to that. So that's when you throw in deloads, right? Some people, the deloads are not enough. Their muscles are still so used to that high volume training. So you have to go through periods of time to where months of time, you're resensitizing the muscles, allowing them to give a break. So that's where I like to use these resensitization periods, keeping their calories at maintenance if we can, in order to prevent gaining excess fat in that stage, and also recognizing that they are not training those muscles anymore. So we don't want to put them in a deficit, because then they're going to lose muscle from not having enough calories and not working that muscle group.
So is that training in general? Is that just eliminating training, or is that just changing out the type of training they're doing for that period of time?
It 100% depends on the person. Some people with resensitization, it's psychologically needed to go through periods of time where they're training barely anything, and they're totally changing up their training, like doing more yoga, more walking. But for the most part, a lot of people is just changing up what their whole entire volume schedule looks like and what they're working day to day. Maintenance phases. I love maintenance phases. There is so much magic in maintenance phases. And this is where recomposition happens for the most part. Gaining muscle and losing fat at the exact same time. Now, when it comes down to these maintenance phases, the most important part is shooting for that maintenance first. So that's where we go off of what is somebody's diet history like, what is their general intake like, and we figure out their maintenance from there, but we then adjust weekly based on how their body responds, right? Because every single week, your body can change. So we might have to add a little bit of calories one week, we might have to decrease a little bit. It all depends on what somebody's total energy expenditure is going to be like, and how their different lifestyle factors affect that. So again, those are the macronutrients that I suggest for that. When it comes down to Rebecca here, we were focusing on maintenance for her and body recomposition. And the amazing part about these maintenance phases is you can actually push calories pretty high while maintaining body weight. And this is what some people call reverse dieting. So with Rebecca, we were able to get her fats up by like 20 grams and her carbs by over 100 grams, and her maintaining her body weight and actually losing fat. So it's pretty awesome. Any questions? Okay. When it comes down to contest prep and dieting, the most important thing we want to do is hold on to that muscle mass. So we want to hold on to that muscle mass. We want to keep all reproductive hormones, thyroid hormones up. We want to prevent hunger hormones from spiking up. We want to give periods of refeeds and diet breaks. That way we can increase leptin. So there's a lot of different ways we can do this, but I like to keep calories as high as possible, cardio as low as possible, and check in every single week, decreasing only when needed. The frustrating part is when people, they cut and slash calories right off the bat. like 500 to 800 calorie surpluses. And then they run themselves into the ground. They can't push the calories any lower. They can't do any more cardio. So you have to give wiggle room to allow yourself to be able to have space for that calorie deficit. So with here, we want to also prevent diet fatigue, hormonal downregulation, and physiological distress. So if anybody has seen bodybuilders, you have prep goggles. So those prep goggles go on and clients do not see any changes that they make week to week. So that's where it's really important for cortisol reasons, because cortisol is going to blunt fat loss sometimes and of course causes water retention, but it's really important to remind the client they're making changes, encourage them, because those little baby changes people don't see week to week. They still think they're not ready. They still think they're fat. So you really have to be there as an encouragement and a reminder that they're making progress. So this was Laura, just one of my clients. She got her calories significantly high in her off season and was able to prep, and we got her down to 1,600 calories, which was pretty awesome for a prep. I tend to see people have to drop from 1,500 down to even 1,300 for contest prep. Some people dip lower. I refuse to go lower than that. Any questions? Okay. Oh, and another thing, I like to use cardio strategically. So there's different types of cardio, as you guys know, that have different effects on the body, right? But when it comes down to cardio, I like to use it as a recovery tool if I can. So HIIT versus LISS. HIIT tends to be harder on the body, harder to recover. LISS, low intensity. MISS, I use moderate intensity. But I like to use LISS and MISS as recovery methods as well as increasing energy expenditure. So I would rather have somebody do incline walks than go try and knock out sprints at the end of their contest prep, because those sprints are just gonna leave them spent. They're not gonna have any energy for the rest of the day. Their meat levels are gonna go down. So I just like to use, for the most part, low intensity if we can for cardio. Of course, everybody responds differently. That's the magic of contest prep. Post-show, this is where a lot of people go off the wagon. And it's really important to immediately get calories up to maintenance and then bump up calories from there, slowly. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to overshoot fat. It is very, very easy to gain new body fat that is very stubborn to lose post-show. A lot of women, they struggle with psychological distress after contest prep. They go all out with binges. That's why it's really important to go straight to maintenance, slowly reverse from there, and have a coach that's going to help you psychologically to be able to get through this process, because you have those prep goggles on. That won't disappear for a few months. You have upregulation of hunger. Leptin's low. You have all these different low thyroid hormone, low estrogen, low progesterone, low testosterone, all these different low hormones that are basically screaming at your body that you need more food. So it really becomes an uphill battle mentally for people that you have to slowly up your food intake. I do find most people do best when we get their fat to a moderate amount and then start upping carbs right away, because carbohydrates are satiating. They're going to provide people with enough energy, and I do find that they less deposit as body fat for people unless somebody is insulin resistant. Then, of course, we go the whole route. Let's add fat. When it comes down to looking at those different changes, that's where it's really fun, because the more clients you have, the more you're able to see visually how people respond to different foods, and you kind of get a picture of like, oh, this person might be insulin resistant, this person might be insulin sensitive. So it becomes really a game of trial and error, and also looking at their diet history and seeing how they could respond. I like to focus on gaining max 5 to 10 pounds if possible. Of course, this includes water weight, right? So post-show, a lot of women freak out and they're like, oh my God, I'm gaining body weight. But it's really just like 5 pounds of water that's sitting on them, because peak week, we don't decrease water, but we do have lower carbs that increase. So that decreases their glycogen content, that decreases their water in their body. So people freak out, but it's totally normal. I like to stick to 5 to 10 pounds. Any questions?
So straight up to, I mean, you may see a significant increase as soon as the show's over. So straight up to maintenance needs, and then from there slowly progressing up.
Correct. Yeah. What some people do is they like to start where their contest prep diet was, and then slowly up from there. And that kind of just like spins your wheels, right? So if you get yourself immediately to maintenance, then you're able to help start the process for recovery, getting those thyroid hormones, those metabolic hormones, everything upregulated first. And that's the whole goal.
What's the time period for a cut?
For a cut, 100% depends on the person. I like to say like 4 months max, but that's it. That's doing diet breaks
What about
and
the
refeeds.
shortest?
The shortest, the shortest. I've done 2-week cuts before, and I tend to be, if somebody's doing a 2-week cut, I tend to be more aggressive. Yeah, the longer the cut is, the more you have wiggle room, and the slower you can go. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys some examples of my clients just to show you there's huge variation in how people respond post-show and pre-show. So this is Sarah. These were her pre-show, her pre-peak week macros. This is pretty typical when you're getting down to the wire. This is as low as my clients ever go. And then 2 months post-show, this is where she's at. So as you can see, she's basically within that 5-pound range post-show. She's got her calories significantly higher. Her cardio has drastically reduced. She was doing about 60-minute walks per day with cycling once per week, and now she is doing cycling twice per week because she's an instructor. I had instructed her to drop her spinning to 1 time a week for pre-stage because it was way too much on her body. She was not responding well because of cortisol, so we dropped that down. Now she's doing that 2 times a week, and she's maintaining right here. The most important thing for Sarah specifically when she was dieting was making sure we were getting control of her digestion. Once we were able to get in control of her digestion and optimize that, and we dropped a spin class, that's when her weight started dropping. So there's a lot of different things that can cause metabolic adaptation, right? Any inflammation, any stressors. So that's what Sarah had to deal with. Then we have Audra. She's my master's competitor. She is an amazing mommy of some girls that are basically my age, so she's like my second mom, so I love her. But the cool thing about Audra is how she responded when we added in herbals to help with her perimenopause symptoms. So a lot of older competitors, they freak out, they think perimenopause or menopause is going to cause them to not be able to lose weight. But the thing is, there's things you can do, diet, lifestyle, and supplement-wise, to help somebody in order to optimize their hormones, optimize how they're feeling. So for Audra, she was not responding until we added in those herbals and we focused on sleep and stress reduction. So for her, we added in black cohosh. We also added in phytosterols with a little bit of soy and flaxseed. And that really helped her. That got rid of her night sweats, got rid of her day sweats, really helped her mood and her energy levels. So once we started that, prep was smooth sailing for the most part, other than the daily grind of life. And post-show, she has been what I call my magic Wonder Woman. And we just increase food, and she just takes it and soaks it all in and uses it. So post-show, she's already up significantly. And she continues to amaze me, and she is basically, 4 pounds above stage weight? So, any questions? Okay, so I just made this handy dandy graphic. It's not much, but just kind of gives a little guideline on what to do for fat loss strategies. Now, I know there's some new papers out there saying new equations for different people and different physique athletes, bodybuilders, all that stuff. Personally, I'm not a fan of calculators. I absolutely hate them, especially macro calculators. I like to always go based off of what is somebody eating now, what was their diet like now through even 3 months prior to them working with me. Okay, forgotten but essential factors when it comes down to physique enhancement: your NEAT levels, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, a little bit of fidgeting, a little bit of walking, them walking their dogs less. So when it comes down to dieting and especially contest prep, those NEAT levels significantly drop in people. So we want to make sure that we're keeping that up, because that can span a range of 200 to 300 calories. They're not burning like they used to. So we want to keep those normal if we can. I don't currently have people track, but you can track with fitness trackers. Sleep, stress management, these are really, really important. People, if they're super stressed out, sometimes they just will not drop weight. I have had clients to where it was peak week and I'm like, you look like you gained like 10 pounds from water retention because they were so stressed. So you have to focus on stress reduction. You have to make sure people are getting adequate sleep. I hate seeing people who get like 5 to 6 hours of sleep. So 7 to 8 hours, great goal. If they can get more, even better. Really important. And then of course, food quality matters. It's not just macros. You want to make sure you have an anti-inflammatory diet, providing your body with all those micronutrients that you need. And then recovery. We really want to focus on that recovery aspect in workouts. So that's another reason why I mentioned LISS and MISS for cardio. Okay, so meal timing. A lot of people get hung up on meal timing and they think they have to have like 6 meals a day, right? So the most important thing with meal timing is what's going to work for you. What does your total entire day look like? What are your overall goals, and what do you enjoy? So meal timing, I like to say, optimize protein synthesis, balance your blood sugar, focus on what's going to be good for your digestion. So how to optimize protein synthesis? We want to spread out our protein throughout the day, at least 3 to 4 meals, focusing on leucine. I'm a huge fan of sticking to animal proteins over plant proteins because, of course, they have all the essential amino acids that we need. But if you are a vegan, a vegetarian athlete, just increasing your protein can help to combat that. 20 grams of protein at a time tends to be pretty good for people. It's seen in the literature that increasing to 40% can moderately increase protein, but I like to say have at least 20 to 40 grams of protein 3 to 4 times a day, focusing on that 1.5 to 2.5 grams per kilogram body weight of protein. Okay. Branched chain amino acids, a lot of people think they need them, and I constantly see it in bodybuilders think that they need to drink them throughout the day. Please don't do that. You're going to keep NPS elevated as high as possible. We need those dips and those spikes. So BCAAs, we don't need them unless you're doing fasted training. Some people benefit from them when it comes down to straight recovery. Some people like them as a placebo. Some people like it to flavor nasty water. That's totally okay, but you do not need them. And then when it comes down to muscle protein synthesis, of course, we all know this, we have to get all the essential amino acids. So then what you want to do is you want to have an essential amino acid blend, if you can, over branched chain amino acids. Pre-workout nutrition. The most important thing here is what's going to digest well, what's going to give you stable blood sugar levels in your training. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to just take in some, let's say, Swedish fish and then go work out, because we're going to spike that blood glucose as high as possible, possibly coming crashing down in the middle of our workout, and we do not want that happening. Nobody wants to get hangry, go hypoglycemic. So we want to make sure we focus on blood sugar management, and we also have optimal digestion. That way we aren't running to the bathroom in the middle of our workout. So we want to have stable energy levels. What I like to suggest for people is doing a mix of a low glycemic and a high glycemic carb, and then doing a little bit of fat, not too much, because that fat's going to delay that digestion. It's also going to delay muscle protein synthesis, and then making sure we're having a high quality source of protein. Now, when it comes down to pre-workout, it's also asking the client, Do you do well when you have more food in your system sooner, or do you do well when you have some time to digest your food fully before you go work out? So some people, they get so hung up in the rules of pre-workout and post-workout. And the most important part is, how do you feel when you go into the gym? How do you feel with recovery? How do you feel with digestion? So it's really important that these things be taken into account and not just follow strict pre-workout guidelines. So practical approaches to pre-workout, like I said, I like to mix the carbohydrates. You can also mix in some fructose and some fruit to help with getting in a little bit more calories, a little bit more carbohydrates into your body via these transporters. When it comes down to that fiber and fat, like I said, I like to do moderate fat. I like to throw in a little bit of fiber too, especially if somebody goes hypoglycemic mid-workout. So I'll add in a little bit of fat, a little bit of fiber, just to help delay that blood sugar response. Not too much, because we all know those effects. But yeah. Pre-workout guidelines, I like to say 30 to 60 minutes before training if somebody's going to do a low-fat, low-fiber kind of meal. If they're 2 to 3 hours pre-training, then just have a normal meal and then focus on your post-workout nutrition, being those fast-digesting glycemic carbs, low-fat, low-fiber, high-protein, fast-digesting protein. So it all depends on somebody's total timing. That's just my example. The oats, banana, protein powder, chia seeds. That's like something I would eat. Okay, peri-workout nutrition, when it comes down to optimizing body composition, the larger you are, the more calories that you eat, the more important this is. If you are just a bikini competitor or a general weight loss client, don't even worry about this. Like this doesn't matter. This is not going to make a huge deal. But when it comes down to you have more calories, especially in your off season, or you're having really bad troubles with recovery, peri-workout can be a game changer. So taking that peri-workout can really blunt the cortisol response with training. It can increase recovery. So when we do this, what we want is we want a fast digesting carbohydrate and essential amino acids. So doing something like 10 to 20 grams of branched cyclic dextrin and some essential amino acids, 5 to 10 grams, can be highly beneficial. You don't have to do the essential amino acids. You can also do 15 grams of fast digesting whey. I love, have you guys heard of John Meadows' Mountain Dog Diet? Okay, John Meadows is an incredible person who kind of started this whole trend, but he has provided a lot of different papers and a lot of client feedback on how this has helped him and his clients, but that's who originally taught me this. I have not personally done this because I would way prefer just eating my food, but for anybody who has a lot of food to pound, this can be really beneficial. You can also do things like maltodextrin, Gatorade, waxy maize, but people respond differently based on how they digest these things, and I find the branched cyclic dextrin is the easiest thing digestion-wise. Any questions? Okay. Post-workout nutrition, this also depends on timing. So if somebody had that low-fat, low-fiber, high-carb, high-protein meal before they worked out, then post-workout nutrition, they can wait a few hours. But if somebody didn't, say that they ate 2 to 3 hours before training, then that post-workout is really important to get in as soon as possible. When it comes down to post-workout, we want to focus on the recovery process, boosting muscle protein synthesis. As we know, more carbs does not further increase muscle protein synthesis, but it can help increase recovery, which is what we need. You can pound yourself in the gym, but if you're not recovering from the gym, you're not going to make progress. So this is where post-workout nutrition is really important. I see people, they're like, oh, I don't eat till 2 hours post-workout. And that might be okay depending on how you ate pre-workout, but post-workout is a huge opportunity for that recovery, plus you're super insulin sensitive. So whether with weight training, we become insulin sensitive. We don't need insulin to bring that glucose into ourselves, technically. But we want to take advantage of this window when we're most insulin sensitive, especially if somebody is actually insulin resistant. So really make sure to take advantage of that post-workout nutrition. I don't find that people need to do a whey post-workout. I like to say just get in a good quality source of protein that you enjoy. Metabolic adaptation, I talked about this earlier, but we want to make sure we prevent this from happening. We want to keep your thyroid hormone, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone up, leptin up. We want to make sure that we are trying our best to deal with hunger because ghrelin is going to spike up with dieting, but we're going to try and combat these things through refeeds and diet breaks and strategically using these in order to increase leptin. And when it comes down to refeeds, these are periods of time. Normally I do 2 to 3 day refeeds. Some people even get 4-day refeeds, but these are periods of time to where you're keeping calories, you set them at maintenance. So somebody's dieting, you set those refeeds at maintenance. You make sure that most of those calories are coming from carbohydrates because that is what leptin is going to respond to. So to give you an example, for Audra, she had 35 fat, 100 carb, 130 grams of protein. We gave her 180 grams of carbs for her 2-day refeeds.
Are these refeeds weekly or monthly?
We're almost weekly, yes. Some people, they don't get them weekly because we just need to put them in a deeper deficit and they're responding well. But I like to, if somebody starts stalling out, it's a huge sign that metabolic adaptation is starting to occur. And I always like to go to the refeed route before cutting calories.
So you find incorporating this in a couple of times a week, you feel, from your observation, tends to get people to start jumpstarting weight loss again? As far
Yes, if they stall, especially. Hormones are a demon for a lot of people. And so doing everything that we can to spike up leptin tends to really make a huge difference. Now, some people, if they're insulin resistant, if they have leptin resistance, the refeeds don't work, and you'll figure that out right away. But then that's where, there's other issues going into play. Okay, so preventing that metabolic adaptation. I talked about keeping those calories as high as possible, cardio as low as possible, focusing on stress reduction, making sure we focus on sleep, NEAT levels, keep those consistent. What else do I have on here? Oh yeah, optimize micronutrient density of the diet to get a wide variety of micronutrients, and use those refeeds and diet breaks as needed. I tend to see stress reduction be the biggest one, really. Okay, this is a beautiful chart by Alan Aragon. If you do not follow him or his studies, make sure you do. Okay, supplementation, just brief. These are just things that I suggest for my clients. Creatine, multivitamin, omega-3s, beta-alanine for the most part. I like to use Vitex and myo-inositol for my women because when we are dieting, contest prep, our hormones like to just jump ship. They like to just say, see you later. So Vitex is really good for helping to balance estrogen and progesterone levels. And the myo-inositol is really good for insulin sensitivity as well as helping with ovulation, not necessarily causing ovulation, but just helping ovulation to happen. That way we can keep somebody's menstrual cycle throughout prep. So I like using those, and of course protein powder is something you can use. There's a lot of different other supplements that people like to use. I like to say, don't waste your money, and also please don't go the whole PED route. Okay, so these are just examples of my clients, how people have responded differently. So we have Krista, Rachel, Melinda, Laura, Cheyenne. So all of these women responded 100% differently and had to have different calories, cardio, different diets. Some people had to focus on meal timing in order to get them to be insulin sensitive and to lose weight. Some people, it did not matter. They can do whatever they wanted. Like this unicorn Laura. Yeah. And then we have some more here. So that's about it. All these ladies competed together and each had drastically different preps, which is the magic of working with physique clients, is everybody responds so differently. So it really is watching them week to week, seeing how they respond. I cannot reiterate enough though, when it comes down to optimizing your physique, having somebody as an eye, an objective eye to help you, because stress is the demon of fat loss. It can and will stop you from losing fat. So, and then I just included these because science. The ISSN sports nutrition recommendations. So we have those. And the references. And that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you.
If anybody wants any of those slides, just, I can email them out.